I'm 78 years old, and 2 weeks ago a doctor I barely know sat across from me and said there wasn't anything left to try. 2 weeks. Maybe a little more if I'm stubborn. Maybe less if my body decides it's done before I am. I've been awake a lot since then. Not in a dramatic way. Just lying there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the refrigerator hum in the kitchen, thinking about how quiet a life can get when most of it is already behind you. I keep thinking I would feel panic or fear. Mostly I feel regret. The slow kind, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that settles in and doesn't leave. I used to believe I had time. I believed that for most of my life. I didn't waste it on nothing. That's what makes this harder to explain. I worked. I showed up. I did what I was supposed to do. I was responsible. People trusted me. People relied on me. But very few people really knew me. And fewer still are left. When you're young, you think regret comes from big mistakes. Affairs, crimes, walking away from your children, things like that. For me, it came from small delays, from saying later so often that later quietly turned into never. I grew up in a small house with thin walls and a mother who worried about everything. She wanted me safe, secure, married to a man with a steady job. That was success to her. I didn't argue. I absorbed it like air. In my 20s, I had ideas, nothing dramatic, just a sense that life might be wider than what I could see from where I stood. I liked to write. I liked long walks alone. I liked conversations that didn't end quickly. I didn't know what to do with those things, so I treated them like hobbies, luxuries, things to come back to once real life was handled. I married at 24. He wasn't unkind. That's important to say. He was practical, organized. He liked plans. He liked knowing where things were going. I thought that was what love looked like. Certainty, stability, a shared calendar. We built a life that made sense on paper. House, jobs, routines. We didn't fight much. We also didn't talk very deeply. There was always dinner to make, laundry to fold, something on television filling the quiet. I told myself this was adulthood, that wanting more was childish, ungrateful. In my 30s, the days got faster. Work took more of me than I realized, not because anyone forced me, but because being useful felt good. Being needed felt like proof I mattered, so I said yes. I stayed late. I answered calls on weekends. I brought my work home in my head. Even when I left it at the office, I thought presence was something you could make up later. I was wrong. Friendships thinned out without drama. No big arguments, just unanswered calls, postponed lunches, Christmas cards that slowly stopped arriving. I noticed, but not enough to change course. I assumed we'd reconnect when things slowed down. Things never really slow down. They just change shape. My marriage ended quietly in my 40s. No betrayal, no shouting, just a mutual recognition that we had become polite strangers. We sat at the kitchen table and agreed it wasn't working. I remember feeling relieved more than heartbroken. That should have told me something earlier. After the divorce, I told myself I would finally focus on what I wanted. I even said it out loud to a friend once, but wanting something requires listening to yourself. And by then, I had years of practice not doing that. I dated a little, nothing serious. I kept people at a careful distance. I told myself I was independent, strong. I didn't need much. The truth is, I was afraid of wanting too much and finding out I'd waited too long. My parents aged and died while I was busy being capable. I visited, I helped, I handled the arrangements. I don't remember many conversations from those years, just logistics, just tasks. I wish I had asked more questions. I wish I had sat longer without trying to fix anything. In my 50s, I was successful by most standards. Good position, respect, financial security. I could buy what I needed. I could travel if I wanted to. I rarely did. I was always tired. Not physically, just a quiet exhaustion that came from living slightly off to the side of myself. I didn't know how to name it then. I just knew that when I imagined the future, it felt thin, like a hallway with the same door repeating over and over. I told myself retirement would be the beginning. I held on to that idea like a promise. When I finally have time, I'll live. When the obligations ease, I'll figure out who I am. Retirement came at 67. There was a small party, a cake, speeches about my dedication. People hugged me and said I'd earned my rest. I went home that afternoon and sat alone in my living room, and the silence felt heavier than I expected. Time is not automatically generous. If you don't know how to be with yourself, having more hours just gives that truth more space. I tried to fill the days, classes, volunteering, keeping busy. It all felt faintly performative, even to me. I was still avoiding something, though I couldn't have told you what. The turning point didn't come with drama. It rarely does. It came when a woman I'd known since my 20s died suddenly. We weren't close anymore. We exchanged holiday messages, the polite kind. At her funeral, people stood up and spoke about shared memories I wasn't part of, trips I skipped, moments I postponed. I realized how many lives had continued without me while I was waiting to feel ready. That night, I went home and cried in a way I hadn't in decades, not for her exactly, for the version of myself that kept assuming there would be time to show up later. After that, the days felt sharper, more fragile. I noticed how quickly weeks passed, how easily months disappeared. I started writing again, a little, not well, just honestly. I wish I had done that sooner, before my hands stiffened, before my eyes tired so easily. And now here I am, 78, sitting in this chair, counting pills, counting days. People tell me I lived a good life. Maybe I did. I don't feel like I failed, but I feel like I postponed myself into silence. There are things I never said because the moment didn't feel right. There were people I loved quietly, carefully, without ever letting them know the depth of it. There were mornings I rushed through because I was focused on the next obligation instead of the one breath I was actually in. I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was being patient. I didn't realize I was practicing absence. When the doctor told me how little time was left, I didn't think about my career. I didn't think about my savings or my apartment or my resume of reliability. I thought about faces, conversations that never happened. Afternoons I turned into errands instead of memories. You don't feel the cost of that right away. That's the danger. The bill comes due much later when there's very little you can do about it. If you're listening to this and you're young, I won't tell you what to do. I don't believe in advice shouted from the end of life. I'll just tell you what I wish someone had said to me quietly. Pay attention to what you keep postponing, especially the things that don't have deadlines attached to them. Work will always find a way to take more from you. Approval is a bottomless request. Productivity has no finish line. But the people who love you will not always be reachable. And the version of you that feels most alive is not patient forever. I assume time was a kind partner. It isn't. It's neutral. It just keeps moving. In 2 weeks, or maybe sooner, I'll be gone. My apartment will be cleaned out by someone else. My things will be sorted into piles, useful, donatable, disposable. That's not sad to me, it's honest. What hurts is knowing how much of myself never fully arrived. I'm not angry anymore. I don't have the energy for that. I feel a strange gratitude alongside the sorrow. I had moments of beauty. I had kindness. I had safety. I just wish I had allowed myself more presence inside it all. If this meant something to you, if any part of it felt uncomfortably familiar, don't wait for certainty. It doesn't come. Show up a little earlier, stay a little longer, say the thing while you still can. I'm tired now, in a gentle way, and I think that's okay. This is where my time ends.